Hello, this is the Answer Lady, here to talk with you today about making German short rows on a knitting loom. This is a way to reduce the bulk, eliminate holes, and make a generally attractive and neat heel or toe. This may not be the only way, but this one works for me. This sock toe was made in the same method. In fact, it's the mate to the next sock I'm about to knit. And this is what it looks like. I'm showing you on the toe because two different colors meet here, and I think it allows you to see what the double stitch produces. It's that little place right there. You can actually see the two strands of yarn where they've pulled together to tighten up. Looks very nice. Here are 4 different looms, and on top of each one is a sample of a pretend sock heel or a real one made with a method called German short rowing. On this one, you've got a whole sock and the toe was done in the same manner. The point of German short rows is to make a neat heel without any holes that is not difficult to do. It does have a little tight spot where you knit over the short rowed spot, and that's one reason that stretchy yarns make it really nice and easy. This is the little loom from Knitting Board. It's about the same as the all-in-one and the sock loom. So if you can do the short rows on this one, you can on any. I have just knitted this stitch. Pull. This is the mainstay of the German short row. We bring the working yarn to the front, give it a pull, and you end up with this doubled area. Here's my new stitch I just made, and over here I'm actually pulling the old stitch up and around, so now they're sharing the peg, and you can see why it might get called double stitch because of that. Now we're going to knit back to whatever is the next last stitch in this short row, and I will be easy to tell, or it will be easy for me to tell, because you'll see the double stitches on the remaining ones. 1, 2, 3, obviously already involved in the short rowing. So we knit 4 normally. I'm doing the U-wrap. I know it looks a little bit like a flat stitch, but as I knit back, I'll explain. Get a hold of your yarn and bring it to the front. Mine's trying to escape, but no such luck, yarn. Give it a tug. Now we have those 2 strands showing in the front, and I knit back. I'm keeping my thumb on it to keep enough pressure that the pulling that I did doesn't back out. We want these to stay about where they are. Now, why is this a U-stitch, not a flat stitch, even though I'm not wrapping around the peg as most people do? Because as I knit up and over, I give a little exaggerated pull to the back, which causes the yarn to make that U shape. There's nothing better or worse about one method than the other, but I find this one simple and I like it better, personally. Not a moral statement. Use the one you like. We'll knit back, and this will be our last stitch. You can see these are already short rowed. U-stitch. When I'm not working behind the camera, my yarn doesn't tend to get away from me like that, but I have less access to the best position from here, and I want you to have the best position so you can see. Here comes my last stitch. I'm suspecting that in flat stitch this would get very, very hard to do, because how would we be able to manipulate the old tight flat stitch up to do this? So there's the stitch that's going to be added to hold, basically. We're knitting the others and holding the ones that are not knitting. And back we go. I'll wrap one more on this loom, then we'll move on to another loom. plainly, there's my last already short row stitch. You wouldn't make a mistake because they look different. U-stitch, pull back, and now I head back the other way. I've started the short rowing out process. I've done several rows so you could see the little heel cup developing. And here's how it works. Let me get my yarn freed up. I just knitted off a doubled stitch right here. So I've extended the short rows to be longer in this direction going one row. Actually, I pointed to the wrong one. I knitted this one, not this one. I'm about to knit this one in the normal way, going back to the left. So we're going to U-stitch across as usual. And the very last stitch that we knit will be one that was in hold or not being knitted, and so it will be one that has got a double stitch on it. And it will be very tight. That's really the goal of the doubled stitch, where you pull back from the row below. Of course you're tightening up, shortening the yarn. There it is. You can see a knot-like configuration. And you need to put the tool all the way behind everything, up and over. Very snug, but doable. And if it were not snug, I think it would fail to achieve its goal. So now I'll knit back to the right. I've knitted back to the right, and I'm ready to add my stitch for this row to lengthen the rows again. So here we have another double stitch right here, pulling hard up and over. Now let me be really clear about what I do next. I do not wrap anything, nor do I knit this stitch again. I bring the yarn to the front without going around this, just coming out from behind it, going this direction I need to go, and begin knitting here. If I were to wrap it, it would be more like the traditional way that we've done, but I don't think in this instance it would look very good because we just knitted it. And if we were to knit it again, we would add a row and thus add length in a spot that we don't want it and possibly create a hole. So we just knit it once and then head back the other direction. Let's do that once more on this sample. U-stitching, remembering that I'm doing that just by exaggerating my movement. You can watch the yarn make a U. That's a normal stitch. Let me free my yarn. I'm kind of leaning on it. Put this in the normal position for knitting. See my knot and two strands are over here. Put my tool behind the whole mess, which is not a mess, it's on purpose, and lift it over. The looms that I knit on most, because they're my favorites, are Kiss looms. Let's see. This was already added to the short rows. You can see the doubled stitch right there. This was the last stitch knitted. Bring the yarn to the front. On a Kiss loom, you've got pins to consider, but it's not difficult. Don't go around or outside of any pins. Just come right in front of the last peg knitted. Pull on the last stitch until it appears, making that double stitch shape in the front. And now resume U-wrapping. On the Kiss, of course, U-wrap is the natural and normal choice, and that's mostly what we all use. And I'm going to U-wrap around the corner on this one because I'm using quite a few stitches all the way to the last stitch in the row. On a Kiss, we normally wrap the whole row because we can. It's very simple and easy to do. And then go back and knit them over. I made a little mistake. This one already has a doubled stitch on it, so that can't be my last stitch. It should be this one. See how easy it is to identify where you are. Now I've knitted the last one on purpose so that I can go back. It'll anchor while I finish my row, which is one of the things that I enjoy about Kisses. And I'll finish the rest of the row all the way around here off camera. No need to bore you with that. Let's make the doubled stitch for the short row. Pull to the front and then begin U-wrapping normally. If you want to, on the kiss, there's my doubled stitch, there's my first stitch of this row. You can go ahead and knit that first stitch over, just so you don't have to use your fingers to keep pressure on the doubled stitch. And we knit all the way over to the left. I already knitted the last stitch of the row to hold it, as I usually do. So here are the second and third stitch from the end. 3, 2, here's stitch number 1. Again, without going around any pins, we bring the working yarn forward, tug on that stitch, and I'm going to turn this up in the hopes that you can see down. You should see 2 strands of yarn there and 1 there. That's where the new stitch is on the right and the old stitch is pulling up on the left. And now I'll continue knitting back to the right. Now I'm knitting up to the point where I'm ready to add a stitch. I've already added quite a few. I'll show you in a second. My thumb is on the last normal stitch for this row, and this is where there's a doubled stitch. Let me try to make it so you can see. So I put my tool behind the whole thing and up and over. Due to the nature of this peg being straight and having room for me to stick my tool in, it's easier than it is on some looms. And watch me just mess up a perfectly normal stitch. I'm back. That stitch wanted to be a prima donna, but we've had a little talk. We just knitted the doubled stitch off, and we're going to head back the other direction in the normal way. And I was about to tell you that because of the shape of the pegs, and of course it doesn't hurt that this fabric is a little bit looser than some of the other fabrics that I'm knitting, these stitches are not so difficult to knit over, but they're still tighter than usual, which of course is what they should be. All of these are normal stitches. This one will be the last normal stitch, and I'll go ahead and use it to anchor the row. Here's my doubled stitch that was pulled around and distorted purposely. Put my tool behind everything, up and over. Now let's be clear about the knitting back. We come behind the peg closest to the one that we just knitted, and here's where we just resume normal E-wrapping. I can't go there yet because I've got to knit these over. But then I'll be able to knit back the other direction. And I'll do that one more time so that you can get another look. I've been knitting from left to right. I still have one more normal stitch to make this row. There we go. Now here's our doubled stitch that we want to knit over to put that stitch back into play and lengthen the row. The whole bundle up and over. This sock is just off the loom with the German short road toe and heel, and I am now working on its mate. We'll do just a little bit because this one's hard to do on film. I have knitted from here over to here. The last stitch on this short row is the one I'm just about to do. I've got the peg wrapped. We'll knit it over normally. Now bring the yarn to the front and give it a tug. There is the camera focusing. And you can see that on each of these pegs leading up, there's a doubled strand of yarn, just like the one that just formed here. So now I will keep enough pressure on it to keep the yarn in that position and knit back the other direction. Got 1 or 2 short rows left on this, and then we will start short rowing out. Remember, short rowing in is the process by which the rows get shorter every single time. short rowing out, they get longer. The end peg here is the last one for this row, normal knitting. It's okay that the sock heel turns this corner. It won't know that it was a rectangle by the time the fabric is off of the loom. I'm going to bring the working yarn between the two pegs and pull, and you saw the double stitch form. Now I'll knit back to the right. I'm working the very shortest row now. I've already worked several of the stitches. The last stitch in this row is the one on the very end on the left. And actually this is the row where I start to increase again. Whoops. There you go. So I will turn the corner. This peg has a double stitch on it now, and to increase the length of this row, it's time to take that doubled stitch and lift it up and over. It's going to be tight because we purposely tightened it by making that German short rowing double stitch. Now here's what I'm going to do. Take the yarn behind so it comes out between the peg I just knitted and the next one that needs to knit. I am not going to knit that a second time this row. That would actually create a hole. And now we will knit to the right and knit off the first doubled stitch on the right, which is that one, I think, and then we'll repeat going back and forth until all are back in work. Now I'm working on a Cindywood loom with this somewhat different yarn. This is a fuzzy, slightly bulky yarn, and this is a 5/8 inch spacing Cindywood. It shows up very well how these stitches have already been added to the short rows. So they're basically in hold. We're not going to work them, this one and this one, until we start enlarging the rows again. This one has just been knitted, so we pull the yarn around and pull back, and there's the double stitch forming. And in case you forget which side to pull on, it's pretty obvious this side won't work. The only side that will produce the doubled stitch is to go around the outside of the peg. So you don't have to think hard about it. It's just a matter of fact. And we'll go knitting to the right. Knitting normal stitches up to then. As usual, I'm using my version of U-stitch, which may look to you like flat stitch, but as I go up and over, I give a final little tug, and you can see that the yarn has made a U around the peg. And here is the last one of the stitches for this row. Up, over, tug, but this one is now going to go into hold, so we're going to turn it into a double stitch, pulling around the peg and knit back the other way. That's doubled, so we'll knit this one, this one, this one, and turn this into a double stitch by pulling. Now this row is when we will start to increase, adding this stitch back to the row. Knitting normally up to it, up, over, and tug, up, over, and tug, and now down here we've got this bundle of stuff that's 2 strands towards the center of the work and a little knot to the right of that. Put the tool behind all of it, and because this yarn is not stretchy, it's quite tight. You see why I love stretchy yarns, but we got it up and over. And knit back to the left and do the same thing again. And remove the debris that seems to be in my yarn. Normal stitch. normal stitch, and here's the doubled stitch that we're going to return to work, lengthening the row. And there we go. And remember, on the return trip, we're not going to knit it again because that would create a hole. We'll just start with the next peg.